In this video, you're going to be learning 4 of the most common ways to loop in JavaScript. So that means that you're going to learn about the for loop, for each, filter, and map methods in JavaScript. And to be honest, those are really the 4 main common ways of looping that you need to know as a beginner when it comes to learning JavaScript. My name is TJ Oyenigi, and I'm a self-taught software engineer that teaches beginners like yourself how to code and helps them to get jobs as software engineers by working with you as your mentor. And to teach you this lesson today in terms of the 4 main ways to loop in JavaScript is going to be one of my old coding bootcamp students that went from being a college football player to learning to code with me as his mentor and ultimately getting a job as a software engineer. So if you're interested in learning more about my coding bootcamp, make sure you check the description below to learn more about that. And if you want to learn how to code, make sure that you comment below learn to code, and I'm going to share with you my free coding curriculum that shows you exactly what you need to learn in the order that you need to learn it in, with free practice problems, projects, tutorials, and tutorial videos to help you to get started on your coding journey. So make sure you comment learn to code below, and I'll make sure to share that with you. Now, let's learn 4 of the most common ways to loop in JavaScript.
Hey, how are y'all doing? My name is Obi, and I'm a former Division I athlete who made the transition to a software engineer, and I made that transition through Roots. So today I'm going to be teaching you guys about the for loop. We're going to be doing this lesson in something called JSBin, which is an online code editor. It allows you to write HTML, CSS, and also JavaScript within the browser. So it's a pretty unique and cool tool that I still use to this day. I started off on it, and it's a wonderful tool. So let me show you how to get to that. Just go to Google, type in jsbin.com. And as you can see, we have the HTML panel, CSS, JavaScript. We have the output for it, and we also have the console. So let's close the HTML and the output. Let's open up JavaScript panel, also the console. And then what I'll normally do is, just to make sure everything is working properly, I'll just console.log, just a random message, hello, and I'll run this. Awesome. So now we know that everything is working properly. So let's comment out. We're learning about the for loop. Let's clear this and let's get straight to it. So the first thing is, whenever you're learning something, you always want to Google everything. Google is your number one, your best friend. If you want to freshen yourself on an array method, a string method, whatever it may be, it's impossible to know everything. So what I like doing is, first thing I do is I'll go to Google and just look up the syntax, the return values, just anything that may have to do with what I'm trying to do. I'll just go to Google and go from there. So let's do that. So let's go to Google and let's just type in for loop in the keyword JavaScript. Enter. So normally I will go to either W3 Schools or Mozilla. These are 2 very good resources. So let's just go to W3 Schools. We have JavaScript for loop, we have the JavaScript loops. Let's go down to the for loop. The for statement creates a loop with 3 optional expressions. So we know that the for loop has 3 expressions, 1, 2, 3, and then we have the code block to be executed. So expression 1 is executed 1 time before the execution of the code block. Okay, expression 2 defines the condition for executing the code block, and expression 3 is executed every time after the code block has been executed. So let's go down here to the example, and we see that it has the for loop, and then inside the parentheses for the first expression, we see that we are declaring I is equal to 0. So we're starting at 0, and this is common convention to use I as the initial variable. You can use whatever you want. You can use C, D, Z, it doesn't matter, but common convention, you'll normally see I as the initial variable. And then for the second condition, we have I is less than 5. So as long as I is less than 5, we are going to run this. And then for the final expression, we are incrementing up each time. And you may be wondering, what is it? What is I plus plus? Let's look that up. So let's go to Google and type in, what is I++ in JavaScript. Okay, and then let's go to Mozilla, and we see that the increment operator, so there we go. So this is an increment operator, and it says the increment operator increments, adds 1 to its operand, and returns the value before or after the increment, depending on where the operator is placed. So essentially, this is the same as saying I is equal to I plus 1. It's just a shorthand for it. So from the example above, you can read expression 1 sets the variable before the loop start, let I equals 0. Okay. Expression 2, which is this right here. Expression 2 defines the condition for the loop to run. I must be less than 5. Okay. And then for expression 3 increases a value I++ each time the code block in the loop has been executed. So as long as I is less than 5, we're going to increment this up another time and run the code block again. So let's do this with our own data. Let's go back to JSPen, and we're going to, let's just create an array and call it array. And let's just set it to an array with 5 random numbers. So let's do 4, 3, 2, 7, and 9. Close that off. And let's start this for loop. So 4. And for the first initial expression, we know we want to initialize the variable and set it to 0, just like they did in the example. Let I equals 0. So let's do that. Let I equals 0. And then for the second expression, we want to define a condition for the loop to run. And we know we want to loop over this array. So in order to do that, we can use the length property on the array. So we can use array dot length. We can do I is less than array dot length. And that's saying as long as I is less than the array dot length, and the length of the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is pretty much just saying I is less than 5. And then don't get this confused with the indexes. So indexes are 0 based, but the length is just how many items are in the array. So this would be for the item 4 would be at index 0. The index for the item 2 would be 0, 1, 2. If you have any questions, just comment below and we'll help you out with that. But let's get right back into the for loop. So we have let I equals 0. So we're initializing to start at 0. And then we have I is less than array.length, which is I is less than 5. And then for the third expression, we have the increment, and we know we want to have I increment each time I is less than 5. So we can write that as I plus plus. And like I said earlier, I plus plus is the same as doing I is equal to I plus 1. But as you can see, that does not look right. So let's use the increment operator, and then we can open up the code block. So right now we're looping over each index in the array, and just to see what we're getting back, let's console.log I. So if I log this out, we should see each index for the array. So run this. Sweet. We see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So as long as I is less than 5, we're going to print that out to the console. And you may be asking, hey Obi, I thought if we're looping over each item, we should be getting back the value of each item. That's a good question. So currently we're just grabbing the index of each value. If you want to get the exact value of each item, we can use something called bracket notation. So we have the name of the array. So in order to do that, we can do array and we can use the open, close bracket, and we have the index of each item. So we can put I into this bracket notation, and then we can place this in a console.log and paste that in there, clear this, and then when I run this, I should get each item in the array because I have the index from I, because we're looping over each and every single item in the array and we have the index for it. So let's run this, and voila, we get each item in the array. So for the next loop we're going to be going over is the for each. So like we did before, we're going to Google everything. So let's go to Google and type in for each. There we go, for each loop, JavaScript. And let's go to, switch it up, let's go to Mozilla. Okay, and then we see the for each method of array instances executes a provided function once for each array element. So let's ignore this for right now. Let's go to the syntax. So for each, the function, it takes a callback function, and then don't worry about this right here. We're just going to worry about this. So for each, it takes a callback function. And you may be wondering, what is a callback function? So let's Google it. What is there we go. A JavaScript callback is a function which is to be executed after another function has finished execution. A more formal definition would be any function that is passed as an argument to another function so that it can be executed, and that other function is called as a callback function. So let's go back to Mozilla, and then we have it right here. A function to execute for each element in the array. Its return value is discarded. The function is called with the following arguments. So the callback function takes 3 arguments: an element, the index, and array. The element is the current element being processed in the array. The second parameter is the index, which is the index of the current element being processed in the array. And then for the last one, we have the array parameter, which is the array that for each was called upon. And honestly, you'll see this sometimes, but you generally just see the element and the index parameters when using the for each loop. So let's go back here, and then let's go back to this example. So we have the array 1, which has it's an array of 3 items, A, B, and C. And then we have array 1.for each, and it's grabbing each element and it's logging out each element. And then, so this right here is called a anonymous function. You may be used to seeing something like this. Function, it's using an arrow function. Take this out, and then let's put this in a code block, log this out, and then we still get the same results. Okay, so let's go back here and let's do it on our own data. So we still have this array of 5 random numbers. Let's say array dot for each, and then let's declare the function. We're not going to use the arrow function. Let's open up the code block, and then as we read, it takes in 3 arguments, or three parameters. The element, or the callback, takes 3 parameters: the element, the index, and the array. So let's just use the element and the index parameters. Index, and then we have each element in this array. So let's log out, say console.log. Let's kind of visualize this. So let's say we're at elements. Let's print out element. Then let's say comma at, just catting everything. We're at element at index. Let's log this out. Let's run this. Okay, so this is a very good visual representation of what we're getting from the two parameters, element and index, using the for each. So for the first one, we see that for the first iteration, we're at element 5 at index 0. So 5 is at index 0, which we all know arrays are 0-based index. And then we're going to iterate to the next element, which is we are at element 3 at index 1, so on and so forth. So as you can see, the for each loop is a lot more concise, and in my opinion, it's a lot easier to follow along. But it's good that we all know both. We know the for loop and for each. Honestly, you'll see some for loops, but you'll see for each loops a lot more. Like I said, they're a lot easier to follow along, and it's easier. It's the readability is a lot easier. So if you have any questions, comment below and I'll get back to you, and we'll discuss things to kind of go along, and just, like I said, just practice. So for the third loop, we're going to talk about the map method. So just like we previously did, we're going to Google what is the map method. So let's do map JavaScript. Let's go to Mozilla, and then let's read what it does. So the map method of array instances creates a new array populated with the results of calling a provided function on every element in the calling array. Let's skip this demo. Let's go to the syntax. So the map method, it takes in a callback function, and as we read before, a callback function it's a function to execute for each element in the array. Its return value is added as a single element in the new array. The function is called with the following arguments. And just like the for each loop, it takes in the callback function inside of the loop takes in 3 arguments, which is the element, the index, and the array. And the unique thing that separates map from the for each loop is the return value. And as we can see, it returns a new array with each element being the result of the callback function. So what the map does, it loops over each item in that array, and it returns, or it does whatever function that you provide the callback function with, and in turn it returns a new array. So let's say we have a problem and we want to multiply the array, or each item in the array, by 2. So with the map method, we know that it returns a new array. So we can put all of this inside of a new variable, and then we can just log out the variable because we know that with map, it returns a whole new array. So let's do const new array is equal to, and we're going to use our original array, which is called array.map. And then we can use function. And then we know that it takes an element, index, and array, but let's just use the element and the index. Open this code block, and we know we want to return each element. So for each element we want to return, so for each element we want to multiply it by 2. We want to return that. And then we know that it returns a whole new array, so we can just console.log new array. And then, so if we run this, we will get each item multiplied by 2. So 5 will be 10, 3, would be 6, 2 would be 4, so on and so forth. So let's run this, and voila, there we go. And then because we want to, or let's just say we want to, so if we go back, we see that this was using, in this demo was using an anonymous function, arrow function. So let's clean this up just a little bit. So instead of using this function declaration, we can use an anonymous function, then we can use an arrow function, and then since it's a one-line statement, let's do this, take this back out. We can take the curly braces out and just implicitly return each element times 2. And then if we do this, we should get the exact same result. Run this, and there we go. So this is primarily what you'll see in majority code bases. It's a lot of anonymous function and arrow function and things like this. So if we want to go back and let's read over this just in English. So what this is saying is we're putting this into a new variable called new array, and we're saying array.map, which is this array right here. And we're saying for each element, we want to return each element times 2. And then we're logging the new array, which returns a new array. That's why you see the results in a array instead of printed out line by line, each element multiplied by 2. So let me know down below if you have any questions, concerns about what I just did, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. For the last and final loop we're going to be touching is the filter loop. So like we always do, let's go to Google, and then let's use the keyword filter JavaScript. Let's go to Mozilla again, and let's read what it does. So the filter method of array instances creates a shallow copy of a portion of a given array, filtered down to just elements from the given array that pass the test implemented by the provided function. Skip the demo for now. And we see that filter takes a callback function, and let's read what the callback function does within the filter. A function, which is a function to execute for each element in the array. It should return a truthy value to keep the element in the resulting array and a falsy value otherwise. The function is called with the following arguments. We know the element, index, an array with 3 parameters, and the return value, a shallow copy of a given array containing just the elements that pass the test. If no elements pass the test, an empty array is returned. So just like the map method, filter method also returns a new array. But with this method, you can filter out items that you do not want in the array. So let's go back to JSPen, and then let's say we have a task that says we want to filter out all the items in the array that are below the number 6. As we know, this returns a new array, so we can put this in a new variable called filtered. Let's call it filtered array. This is equal to, when we want to use our original array, which is called array, up here, dot filter, and then let's use arrow function, takes in element, index, and then let's return. So it's saying, so let's say this in English to kind of make it sound a little bit easier to follow along. So filtered array is equal to array.filter, and we have the 2 parameters, element and index. So we're saying we want to return each element that is greater than the number 6. close that off, and then let's log out filtered array. So in this case, we are only going to return the elements that are greater than the number 6. So we should only get the two items 7 and 8. So let's log this out, run that, and voila, there we go. We get 7 and 8. So let me know if you have any questions about this. Just post them down below and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching the video, and I look forward to pushing out more and creating more videos about just anything considering JavaScript. Like I said, I came through Roots, so I was in the same position as you guys, and just let me know if you guys have any questions and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks.